Hey there, ladies, lads, and everyone in between, and welcome to another Draw With Me video. Today I'm going to be illustrating two characters from a series I've been meaning to draw for the longest time now. They are of course Tanjiro and Nezuko from Demon Slayer. Alright, let's not waste any time and get straight into the line art. I'm starting with Nezuko's line art as she's in the foreground and fills a large portion of the illustration. Since her pose obscures quite a bit of Tanjiro's lower body, starting here will save me a lot of time when I'm drawing Tanjiro later, because I'll know what I do and don't need to draw at that point. I decided to use a thick, solid line brush rather than a pencil type brush, as I wanted this piece to have a more bold feel and have strong lines like the manga. It's funny, Demon Slayer is one of those series where I actually prefer the manga over the anime, which is pretty crazy to me because the anime looks amazing and I usually prefer to watch anime over reading manga, but for some reason I'd just rather read the Demon Slayer manga. Call me crazy, I do all the time, it's fine. It was quite interesting drawing these two as I'd never drawn them before, or any character from Demon Slayer for that matter. Before I even begun drawing the rough sketch, I've spent a good long while studying their character designs. I wanted to make sure I understood how their outfits, accessories, and hair worked when it comes to their character designs. And even after I started drawing, I was constantly referring back to reference images to make sure I was getting it right. That's something to keep in mind when you draw fan art of a new character for the first time. It's always going to take you a bit longer to complete because you're learning about these characters' designs while drawing, and sometimes it can really take a while to figure out how they work. It's the same for all of us. And I mean, I draw a lot of Final Fantasy characters, so you can imagine how long it takes me to figure out a lot of those character designs. Oof, so many hair spikes, guys, and belts. I obviously play a lot of Nomura games. Moving on. Surprisingly though, I actually had a harder time drawing Tanjiro than I did Nezuko. I thought it would be the other way around since Nezuko is wearing a kimono, but thinking about it, I've drawn characters wearing kimonos a few times now, so I do have a decent idea of how they look and work. But I've never really drawn an outfit like Tanjiro's before, so in that case it makes sense that I found him a little more complex to draw. Plus, he has a sword and drawing them always does my head in a little. And of course, the last piece of line art to do is the background and the lines on Tanjiro's coat. That's so typically me, leaving the fiddly detail bits I don't want to do until the very last. I'm a terrible role model, guys. Don't follow my example. And there they are, Tanjiro and Nezuko. Well, in line art form at least. Time to add those base colors. Since I have never drawn them before, I figured it would be best to color pick from some official character art for both Tanjiro and Nezuko and adjust the colors from there to suit my preferences. On the other hand, my color picks for the background were all rough guesses for now, so they do change quite a bit later on, which you'll see. As usual, this was the most straightforward and relaxing step of the illustration process. Now that the base colors are done, let's move on to the first pass of coloring. I must admit I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to color this illustration. My first thought was to keep things simple and cel shade the image just like how they appear in the anime. I started out giving all the shadows hard edges, and I thought that would be that. But about halfway through coloring Nezuko's hair, I realized that straight cel shading wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to add another level to it. Nothing too crazy. I certainly didn't want to completely paint the image since I wanted to pay homage to the manga, but I wanted there to be something more. So I went and had a look at the colored art covers for the manga and noted that they appear to have been made using Copic markers, giving the image a certain softness that contrasts with the hard edges of the line art. I also had a look at some traditional Japanese artworks and decided to draw inspiration from both sources, I found using the airbrush to add some softness to contrast the hardness of the cell shading inspired shadows was exactly the kind of colouring style I was after. It looks particularly pretty on Nezuko's skin and hair, even if I do say so myself. Adding the pattern to Nezuko's kimono was an interesting process, but I think I managed to pull it off. I'm sure there's a more effective way to apply patterns, but hey, I guess I'm stubborn. And that's Nezuko done for now. Time to move on to Tanjiro. What I love the most here is that you can see the contrast of the hard edges with the soft shading really well in his hair, and I kinda love it. The colouring process for Tanjiro is more or less the same as what I did for Nezuko. Do the hard cell shading first, then follow up with the soft shading. Though I did have to change things up slightly in order to colour his coat. I decided the best thing to do would be to create a multiply layer over the top of the black and green layers that make up his coat. This way I could colour the whole jacket in one go. It's an effective time saver and gives a much more effective look overall. And with that, Tanjiro is done. Before I jumped into the background, I decided to add a bit more to line art to help add some more complexity and depth. This happens to me all the time. I get halfway through colouring and realize I want to change a bunch of things with the line art. It can be a bit of a pain, but I do it anyway because I know if I don't, I'm gonna stare at it forever and wish that I had. But hey, it happens. So sometimes you just gotta go with the flow. Then, after I'm done with that, I colour the line art itself, and it helps bring everything together. So far, so good. Colouring the background was quite an interesting process, as I decided to feel it out as I went and not have many preconceived ideas going into it. I can't say if doing it this way made it easier or harder for myself in the end, especially since the colour of the sky changed quite a bit and shading the water made me go a bit loopy a number of times. But it certainly gave me a good excuse to look up a bunch of fantastic pieces of traditional Japanese art to draw inspiration from, so I can't really complain, can I? The final element I decided to add for imagery was some cherry blossoms in the foreground in front of Nezuko. I think they help add a bit more interest to the piece and complement the wave that you see behind Tanjiro. Alright, it's not looking too bad, so let's give it the finishing touches. I start out the second pass of colouring by giving them both some hard white highlights that catch the eye. Much like the hard cell shaded edges, they create a lot of contrast in the image, which I think, being manga inspired, is definitely the way to go. After that, I create a multiply layer which I use to add additional shadows and depth to the characters, areas where the light never hits quite as strongly. I follow this up with overlay layers, which pretty much do the opposite thing. Overlay layers add additional highlights in all the areas where the light source hits the most. I even threw some blue and pink and even yellow overlays in there for fun. I don't know what it is with me and blue and pink, I just really like blue and pink. Okay, once all that is done, I create some additional texture and color correction layers to add that last bit of pop and flair that I'm looking for. And here they are, everyone's favourite siblings from Demon Slayer, Tanjiro and Nezuko. Who's your favourite character from Demon Slayer? Let me know in the comments below and maybe even give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you next time.